Leadership with Dr. Dave, where we are on a journey to answer 4 questions from some of the best leadership minds and some of the best leaders in America. And with that, we have our special guest today, Dr. Fritz Polite. And thank you for coming, Dr. Polite.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Dr. Dave.
All right. Now, could you introduce yourself to our listeners and give us a little bit of a background? Who are you? What do you do?
So my name is Fritz Polite. I am originally from Tampa, Florida. My father was a career military professional, so we ended up traveling all over the world. So I lived about 20 plus years outside the United States, Germany, Okinawa, Japan, California, Utah, Nebraska. And I think that's important because I think it says it kind of defines who I am. I've been around, I've been in different cultures. I've had a chance to experience a different type of education. I went to the Florida State University, received my doctorate, and going down, I got my master's in public administration from Troy University in Alabama. And then I have an undergraduate degree from Simpson College in management. My research area is basically around brand and vertical extension, really marketing, but I also look at the intersection of socio-cultural aspects of sport as it relates to race, ethnicity, gender, and then also the business side of sports as well. Being a multi-billion-dollar industry, I kind of dive down and look at some of the numbers and some of the things that impact higher education. I have 2 children. My son Antoine Polite graduated from Kansas State University. I have 2 granddaughters on that side, and I have a daughter, Amber LaShawn Polite, who lives in Tampa, and I have a granddaughter on that side. I've worked at the University of Central Florida. I've worked at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and I'm currently here at Shenandoah University. My current role is in the coaching and leadership area. I was past the associate vice president for student leadership and development. And then before that, I was the assistant dean in the business school here at Shenandoah University. I do quite a bit of work on the experiential side. So I do a lot of work with consulting with the National Football League. We're working with the Ravens right now, working with the Commanders. I do quite a bit of work with the NCAA. We came back we were at the NBA All-Star game, doing some work with them. So I've been blessed to try to bridge the practitioner side with the academic side. I'm happily married. I've been married to my wife, Rebecca. She goes by Becky, over 30 years. And that in itself, that's an award. She deserves an award for that one, for sure. Yes. But I got lucky on that. I have a wonderful wife, and we reside here in Winchester, Virginia, and really, really enjoy it and like it. And I want to also preface, me introducing myself. I really appreciate you, Dr. Dave, and what you're doing. I think this platform is a brilliant concept, brilliant idea, and I hope that you will continue to share this information and these interviews with the rest of the folks around the world, for that matter, because I think one of the most important concepts that we can focus on is leadership.
Yes, I appreciate that quite a bit. And interesting, you were talking about the different background. Where I kind of met you was when you were with the business school and more of the leadership aspect. And like you said, the business aspect of sports management and sports in general. And how many times you've taken students from Shenandoah to the Olympics and to major sporting events and really try to get that experiential experience for them and realize, okay, here's the behind the scenes. Let me pull behind the curtain, and whether it's sports management or like I said, the business side of it or the leadership, how that incorporates into it. So I thought that was really good. Although I did laugh when we first discovered that we both graduated with a master's in public administration from Troy University.
Yes, sir. So that was cool.
We absolutely had that in common, which I was not expecting. I'm like, okay, very cool. I like that.
Yes, so, and we should go on the record and let it be known that the Masters of Public Administration at Troy University is one of their diamond stellar programs. It's one of their top programs.
It is a good one. I did not attend on Troy. I attended on they had a campus on the Norfolk Naval Base, largest naval base in the world. They had a campus that was there before 9/11, when everything wasn't locked down quite as tight as it is today. And it was nice being able to take those courses on not just Norfolk Naval Base, but a lot of the military installations that were that they had satellite campuses on, around the Greater Hampton Roads region. So I think that was a really nice thing to have. Roughly half of the students, I would say, depending on the class, were active duty military, and about half the class were probably police officers, firefighters, and other members of the civilian public that were in there. So it was a great mix, and I think they really had a phenomenal program. So I'm tickled to go through it, and I'm definitely proud of that, of the work that they've done to put together, like you said, a stellar program. It's good to know that that's one of their crown jewels.
Yeah, well, thank you for your service. I guess I left off one little small piece. I'm also a U.S. Army veteran, 8 years active duty. So just want to thank you for your service. And I took my courses in Germany online as well. So
Gotcha.
we had professors that actually flew over and delivered the majority of the material, but our final exam stuff we did online.
Gotcha. I do remember that there was no online component at the time for ours. It was all in person, accelerated classes. So it was a lot of that. Yes, I spent all my years in the fire department, and so serving in that capacity, like I said. But great, 8 years in the U.S. Army, and we're looking forward to. As of the recording of this episode, we're about 2 weeks out from the Memorial Day, and more importantly, the Healing Fields of Honor here in Winchester. So I would recommend all the listeners, if you go onto YouTube and put 3 simple words, Healing Fields Winchester. See the little 2-minute video that pops up? It's well worth it. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and start with the 4 questions, if we can. Dr. Polite, what does leadership mean to you, and what does good leadership look like?
Again, leadership, what good leadership means to me, or looks like to me, is the ability to influence and modify the behavior of others. In other words, to get folks to follow, or to get folks to do things that many times they either don't want to do, don't think they can do. And so in that vein, good leadership is, I like to use the analogy of, we're going to run up the hill and follow me. And you run up the hill and you look behind you and there's nobody following you, versus run up the hill and 2 or 3 people pass you getting to the top. And so how do you modify? How do you influence? How do you manipulate or modify those thoughts of individuals into group type formats that allows you to be able to accomplish your organizational objective, your mission, or whatever that goal is?
Nice. So yeah, it goes into a couple points that you hear quite often. If you think you're leading and you turn around and no one's following, you're just going for a walk. I like that one from Dr. Maxwell.
Yes,
And
sir.
I think
Yes,
there's a lot of people going for a walk, unfortunately, because even referring back to Maxwell and his 5 levels of leadership, they're only, if you want to call it level of leadership, is the baseline positional power. I can stand in between you and a paycheck.
right.
And so that person's like, you're not leading me. I'm just being compliant so I can continue to collect this paycheck.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think also organizationally, the type of organization impacts. You look at autocratic systems, military, sporting context. It's much more of an autocratic kind of mindset, and so the leader kind of takes on a different way of operating versus
True.
higher education, um, public schools. Those leadership styles are a little different. Primarily being a veteran, some of the methodologies would not be acceptable in other parameters. In other words, people just really, getting very excited and getting very volatile about why you did something wrong may not work well in some corporate structure. So I think it's important to understand, leadership has to align, with the organizational culture and which you're going to be working with, because a military mindset or military thought or autocratic process may not be conducive at Navy Federal Credit Union or, some other Amazon or whatever company you want to do, General Electric, whatever. So I think that's important as well. And I think also this, and we'll talk a little bit later about this concept of emotional intelligence as well, the psychological aspects of leadership, and how do you probe the mind and how do you dig deeper to find out how people are motivated, because everyone's motivated differently, and having the capacity to have multiple angles as relates to how to emotionally attach your style of leadership to other folks.
Very true. And even within some of the autocratic environments that you were talking about, and I'll speak specifically to my experience, in the fire service, leading people on the actual fire ground versus, leaving them in the firehouse is different. You can't bark out orders and do this, because I said so, blah, 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 as well in the station as you can on the fire scene, because a lot of times on the fire scene, if you don't do exactly what they said, exactly when they say it, because they have a bigger perspective than you are, you might not come home tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And our whole goal is to go home at 7 a.m., right? That's the goal. Everybody goes home at 7 a.m. So, if you don't listen to that when and where, unless you see something that's unsafe that they don't, that might cause you not to go home. And so, but leading on the ones that never were able to do really well, or you sometimes call it the really old school guys that led that way all the time. That, because I'm the captain, because I said so, because I'm the chief, and they led the same way their personnel in the fire station on a low key routine basis as they did, on the fire ground, let's just say they weren't the most popular.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that also leads back to, proficiency, being efficient and proficient at what you do, being knowledgeable, experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Because when your life depends on those around you, the leadership component takes on a whole nother dimension, right? There's a difference between leading a elementary school and leading a fire department or a sheriff's department. The stakes are a little bit higher.
Yes, if you're incident commander on a SWAT, one of the SWAT team mission is a whole lot different than making sure the school crossing guard gets little Johnny and little Susie across the street.
Yes, sir. Well, mistakes in leadership cost lives. That's the difference. And
right, and there's
that the stakes are tremendously higher, and that's why you have the training. That's why you train, right, over and over and over and over. But in the midst of all that training, when it comes time, to execute, many times it's not the title of the leader that surfaces, it's the situation. You'll see people take on leadership roles, instantly, naturally. They're not asked. If there's a situation, somebody throws a grenade, everybody looks at it and one person jumps over and throws it out. Well, that's leadership right there. It's a little bravery, might be a little crazy too, but whatever. At the end of the day, the person didn't have a whole lot of time to think about whether they were going to be a leader or not. They kind of reacted. It's a reactionary thing that they just did and that they do. There was the captain of the ship over in I think it was in Italy or in Spain, and they wrecked the ship and the captain left. He just he's like, I'm out of here. And basically there were a bunch of civilian folks on the ship that really took control of the ship and were able to save a large percentage of the folks that were on that ship. And again, here's the leader who had really abandoned the ship. He actually went to court and was convicted and was actually in prison to this day. But my point is that, you can write about leadership and you can read about leadership, but leadership is an action word, right? It's something that's an active, always, you're always learning, always trying to get better, and also situational. Like there's times where you'll be asked to be the leader, and there'll be times you might be asked to kind of support the leadership paradigm. So
Exactly. Well, we got a minute or two left in this segment, but I wanted to. There were two things that you touched on that I thought were pretty interesting, and I wanted to point out. One, you talk about the guy who displays leadership by throwing out the grenade that popped in. Obviously, it wasn't leadership by committee at that point. He just took on the role. It wasn't time to meet on when we're going to have meetings to throw the grenade away.
yes, sir.
And a lot of times, and this one I think we'll touch on in the next segment, but I want to kind of plant in your mind. A lot of times it's not the rank, it's the experience, because you had mentioned all about the experience. For example, you got a brand new person who's super aggressive. They get into fire department. They've got the college education. They do well. They've got the minimum years experience, ace the lieutenant exam, go through everything fine, get promoted. Great. They're in charge of an engine company or a ladder truck. Wonderful. But then you have that old, salty, crusty master firefighter who's been there for 25 years and seen it and done it. And a lot of times if an order comes out that, they'll hear the order from the new lieutenant, but then they'll look at the, master firefighter to say, is that what we're really going to go with? And so who really has the influence and the power? It's almost like obviously the new ensign versus the chief. You know what I mean?
Oh,
New
yeah.
ensign, they say something, and they're going to look at Master Chief like, for real, we're going to do that? And if he kind of nods off on it, all right, we're good. And he's kind of like, I don't think I would do that.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
So let's hit on that topic a little bit more when we get to our next segment. But with that, we are at the end of our first segment of Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, and we will see you all in just a moment. Welcome to Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave. We are back with our second segment, and we are here with Dr. Fritz Polite, and we've covered the question on what does leadership mean to you and what does good leadership look like. But I would like to go ahead and jump into our second question for this next segment is what was one of the biggest leadership challenges you've had to face?
One of the biggest ones I had to face, which really has kind of set a foundation for me today. I was a part of a leadership team that established a very unique program. And that program was based around not just business acumen or the attainment of business acumen for students, but we also wanted to focus and emphasize this leadership component. And the leadership component was tied to their ability to utilize their leadership skills in a servant mentor capacity. In other words, the program was the first in the country and one of the few in the world that focused on those areas. The business acumen, in other words, all of the basic components of an MBA. So it was an MBA program.
Okay.
And I guess that program was called the DeVos program. So Richard DeVos, the owner and founder of Amway, who also owns an NBA franchise, gave a substantial gift to the university to start this program. And the reason that he agreed to do the program was he was really caught by the fact that we were not just focusing on students acquiring business skills. We wanted them to be empowered that we're training and we're educating future leaders, and that you have to be empowered that you are going to leave here and go into the industry in a leadership capacity. And what's going to distinguish you from any of the other MBA programs are going to be some of the work that you've done. And so we incorporated a lot of service activities. So when Katrina and New Orleans came, we took students from Florida to New Orleans to do some work around the Katrina with the NBA. We worked with the NFL as well and trying to help the New Orleans kind of revive itself. So our MBA students were integrally involved, not only on the academic side, but also on the social responsibility and the service mentor paradigm, that you cannot lead without having a servant mentor kind of mindset. And the reason why it was so challenging is because it was new. That mindset was new. And so there were traditional MBA faculty, traditional MBA programs out there that said, what is that? All that stuff's foo-foo. It's not a real MBA program. And now you look back, and that was in 2002. And now the general manager of the San Antonio Spurs graduated from that program. The vice president of marketing for sponsorship activation for the Mavericks graduated from that program.
Wow.
The vice president for Paradigm Sports graduated from that program. And so these same students who were a part of this initial project have now gone on and now are true leaders in the industry. And they still go back to that cornerstone of leadership is definitely associated with a servant mentor kind of mind view, and that social responsibility is important, that we are responsible and accountable to our community and utilizing the platform that we have to do good in the world.
No, I agree with that 100%. It was funny that I just watched an interview yesterday. I forget the gentleman who was doing the interview, but he was interviewing the retired deputy chief for FDNY, so the New York City Fire Department, and it's been there for decades. And he said, what would you advise a new leader, or basically, or like say a new lieutenant in the fire department, a new captain in the fire department? What would you, what's the one, like the top word of advice? He's like, I've got a ton of advice for them, obviously, but the number one thing I would say to them is, you're there to serve your people. Your people aren't there to serve you. He's like,
Absolutely.
drill them, teach them, make them better firefighters, but you're there to serve them, get them what they need. They're not there to serve your needs. You're there to serve their needs. And I like that quite a bit.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As a fellow Rotarian, it's just service above self, service to others above self. I mean, that's the true essence of leadership. Is it's really not about you. It's about how can you serve others.
100%. That is absolutely it. So it sounds like that was quite a bit of a challenge that DeVos School of Business to put together that program, but it sounds like it really panned out at the end. Long-term results sounded great.
Yes, sir. Well, I mean, it's that was in 2002, and that was my first faculty position. I graduated in 2002 from the Florida State University. My first job was at the University of Central Florida, and you fast forward to Shenandoah. When I came here, we were not doing as much in the community as we are now. So we have students doing mentoring at Bass Hoover Elementary School, at Orchard View Elementary School. So those same tenets, those same roots that started in 2002 have carried me throughout my life. And so everywhere I go, any opportunity I get, I try to engage students on that concept of it's not about you, because students really tend sometimes to be about them. And you've got to convince them, you've got to find ways to empower them that they have the potential, they have the skill sets, they have the ability to influence others, particularly young people, and especially those at risk, first gen, lower socioeconomic folks that really need that support, because there are some out there with, the golden spoon, and, parents have all the resources to be successful. Right. But there are others that do not have those resources, and that we want to level the playing field. And by going out to these elementary schools, by creating mentoring programs, it gives those students a leg up and gives them an opportunity to look to the future, that have some vision that they can be, they can do these things, but also empowers the student that they're feeling that they're impacting someone and that they feel like they're contributing. So I think it's a win-win.
Yes.
That the BOSS program, and launching not only the curriculum, but also the programming, the internships, the practicums, all that stuff was very challenging.
Nice. Well, to one thing that you said, I really like the fact of getting students back involved in the community and, like I said, serving. And to a certain extent, a lot of things have been about them. Hey, if I want to get into this university, I have to get this SAT score. I have to get this level of grades. If I want to go into grad school, if I want to get into law school or med school, I have to have a certain LSAT or MCAT. I have to, which understandably so. I get it. And it's very true. But on the other hand, you're absolutely right. It's one of those, when you get out to the real world and realize, hey, if I'm looking as an MBA student to come out, typically they're not looking to come out with an MBA to pour coffee at Starbucks. I mean, that's great to get them through school, but they're looking to get into business, get into industry, get into nonprofit sector, sports, and become leadership material. I don't think you would get an MBA typically to say frontline staff. You want
Right.
to move up and you want to get in the organization. That kind of befits a lot of the students in an MBA program, and good for them. But having that practical experience of knowing, okay, it's not about me at that point when I do become a leader formally. It's about me serving and getting the resources that the people underneath of me need, removing obstacles out of that way. And I like the population that you're trying to help, because I honestly, just from my own experience, came from the same population.
Yes.
Parents didn't have much. My mom always wanted to go to college and never could. And she was like, all right, you're going, boy, but we don't have a whole lot to help you with. Like, you had to work through it. You had to get scholarships. You're going to have to do whatever. So it was definitely a first generation anywhere in my family to ever go to college, much less graduate. But apparently, uh, what mom said stuck, because I was a glutton for punishment and went all the way to, it wasn't just, a paper that said I was full of BS, or, come out with the next level paper that said I was full of more stuff. I ended up finally getting the same piece of paper that said, man, that stuff is now it's piled high and deep.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think, as you well know, education historically has always been a ladder. It's an opportunity or a way to move from one socioeconomic status or level to another socioeconomic status or level. And so
Right.
that's why, I try to articulate that to students that, the fact that you're getting a college education, right, that you need to utilize out those resources to help others to be able to achieve that dream, or to achieve that as well. Because still today, the United States of America has one of the greatest educational systems in the world. That's why people from all over the world want to come here to study, because we still, at the higher education level, I don't want to have a conversation about the public schools. That's a whole
Right.
nother conversation.
That's a
But
different podcast.
that's a different podcast. But higher education, we still are considered one of the front runners in the world as relates to the level of research and the level of education that takes place here. So, I think that was a very challenging time for me, but I think it helped build. It kind of was building blocks that have brought us to where I am today. And we always try to engage our students in why is it important, the significance of your education, not to make the education about you, to really use your degree to and it really sounds corny, Doc. It really sounds corny, but to make society better, right? That's what education really should be designed to do. So it's not about, accounting principles. It's about ethics and accounting principles, right? Because everybody, all the accountants are, they all can do the accounting, but there are some that don't do it as ethically as they should, and that we want to teach our students to have an ethical and moral compass, that you do things the right way.
Yeah, not just doing things right, but doing the right thing.
Yes,
And I
sir.
will say, before I get into the next question, real quick, that at least from personal experience, it feels like moving up the ladder in higher education and getting degrees is much more of exercise in persistence than sometimes it is intelligence. So if you're willing to take the beat down for long enough and you show up enough times and give them enough money and turn in enough papers, they finally feel sorry for you and give you the sheepskin and say, all right, we've asked you to do enough. All right, uncle, okay, here you go. Here's your paper and go. Because I've seen some extraordinarily intelligent people who have not gone. They've done other things in their life. But like I said, a lot of people, I think it truly is a matter of persistence. Whether you want to, is the part-time hobbies is, worth, I work full-time. I got kids. I got whatever. Great. You can't do that and take the boat out every couple nights and every weekend. It's hard to play golf 3 times a week. So there's a few of those things you kind of have to sacrifice and give up, and you can actually, even as a working professional, single mom, whatever, I've seen so many people across the spectrum be able to go back to school online, like I said, or different flexible programs in person to really be able to make it. So I would certainly encourage anybody that if they want to, they can certainly put the nose to the grind. And if they're persistent, they can, and don't mind asking for help, they can actually, achieve an educational goal that they probably didn't think was achievable and probably wasn't 25, 35, 50 years ago.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. That it is we have to first establish, if it was easy,
everybody would do it.
Be a lot more people doing it.
Right.
So on the front end, you have to acknowledge, but I'm with you though, Doc. I think intellectually, if you have a 4-year degree and you've achieved a master's degree, intellectually you have the capability to do a doctorate. Yeah, I totally agree with you. But I also know, as you well know, there are a lot of ABDs running around. And when I say a lot, there's a lot of ABDs.
Yep.
And ABD all but dissertation. That means you've taken all the coursework. You've done all the, all the things. The only thing you have to do now is your research project. And you got to write.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people, like you said, brilliant, extremely smart, that never achieved that level. And I think it goes right back to what you said, that persistence, that grind it out, that won't be told no. I can't begin to tell you how many times I had to rewrite my paper and I was getting frustrated. And I had a mentor that said, look, man, shut up and redo the paper and keep doing it until they say it's okay. Yep. And I buckled down and I did that. So I appreciate your point with that, because I think I can relate. You and I can relate to one another because we've gone through that persistence piece. I've never said, I know that lots of folks that are a lot more intellectually inclined, that, have a much higher level IQ than I had, but they didn't get it. They're ABD to this day. Right. And I just said, I'm not gonna stop.
I think it goes back to discipline and structure too, because as much as persistence, if you have a good dissertation chair that's really helping you and really pushing you along, but those classes are structured. Starts at this time, ends at this time. Here's when the finals due. So a lot of people do well with the structure. And then when they open the cage and they say, fly, be free. And they go, and they're like, oh, I don't have that structure anymore. I've got a year or two to do this I'll get to it when I feel like it. And unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't. And there's only 1 or 2 places where I've seen ABD can still be useful for the career. And I had a friend of mine who used to work in Charlottesville, and I still don't understand to this day, but people make the decisions. He was going for an EDD, Doctor of Education. He was in the public school system. He was trying to move up, and he needed that credential. But for what he was looking for, I think he was looking for a principal, whatever. The EDS, which was basically, I've done all the schoolwork and I don't have my dissertation. So he got a certificate that said EDS when he was, all but dissertation, ABD. And that was enough to get him to the career level that he needed versus finishing one paper and changing your first name, without having to go to court, and I was like, oh man, it's just that one little push, that will just finish. You just got one paper to write and it makes that big of a difference. And he's like, man, look, I'm tired and I've got what I need. And this is why I went back to school, because I needed that credential to be able to get to that next level. Okay, maybe. But most of them, you're absolutely right. That's not the case.
Yeah.
And they've gone to all that schooling and they not finishing that. One word, sad.
Yeah.
Sad. So let's go ahead and wrap this segment up and we will get to our last two questions in our final segment. So we will come back for segment 3 of Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave in just a moment. Back to Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave. Well, we're on a journey to answer 4 leadership questions from some of the best leadership minds and best leaders in America. So with that, we have our final 2 questions here for Dr. Fritz Polite. And our first one is, what do you see as one of the biggest mistakes leaders make today?
I would say a couple. I think one is vision or lack thereof. I think, defining and establishing this skill set of vision, right? It's kind of being able to see things that other people don't see, right? And some of those are sometimes very simple, very, very simplistic. Realistically, that DeVos program was the first of its kind. Nobody had ever thought of it. And at the very beginning, there were a lot of people that did not support that program. They felt like that it was too sociology, too foo-foo, really needs to be focused more on the accounting and the, finance. And our thought process was, we're still going to focus on that. But we really think that we should, kind of hit this area over here. And if we had listened to those folks back then, that program wouldn't be the top 3 programs in the world right now.
Nice.
And so that was one leader, not me, but Dr. Lapchick, Richard Lapchick, my boss, had that vision. I look at David Stearns in the NBA,
right,
and what it was like when he came, and with the drugs and the branding and the imagery was awful. And he had this vision of the NBA, and he, realized that vision. So I think that's one, is leaders' inability to maximize that skill set of having vision, being able to look to the future. And you'll see those companies, there's many, many companies, sir, out there who are no longer around. They don't exist anymore. Blockbuster, right? There's a reason, because they did not adapt. They weren't able, the leadership were not able to envision the future and prepare. As we speak, we are not teaching our students. We should not be teaching our students for today.
right.
We should be teaching our students to prepare them for the future. And what does that look like with AI and with the ability to transfer thought processes from this office to China?
Right.
To deliver an MBA program, which we do, from Winchester, Virginia to Shanghai, China, right? Somebody had to have some vision just to do that, just to figure.
Yes.
And I think COVID had a lot to do with that. So COVID really forced a lot of leaders to look past where they had been looking to the future.
And it definitely forced a lot of innovation and a lot of
absolutely
things that might have come 15 years from now, but they come today.
Absolutely. So I think that's one, Dr. Dave. And I think the other one is this construct of emotional intelligence. And that, I would hope, or I would think that organizations start to focus a little bit more on this whole construct of what is this emotional intelligence thing? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
And I think because, if you look at the research shows that those with high IQ, intellectual quotient levels, and low EQ, emotional quotient levels, versus high EQ, low IQ, the more successful leaders are those with high EQ versus IQ. The perfect one, obviously, we want the balance. If you can have a good mix of intellectual quotient levels, highly intellectual, but also have the emotional intelligence as well. So I would say to frame it, I think the vision aspects of, leaders not being able to kind of forecast out and prepare their organizations in that way. And I'll give you an
Right.
example. This
Okay.
construct of globalization is real. If students don't understand that they're operating in a global economy, we operate every day in a global economy. What happens in Ukraine impacts us at Walmart, but a lot of the students may not know that. And the reason they don't is because maybe higher education is not really grinding down and getting down to nitty gritty to explain to them the importance of being global or being able to think on a global perspective or on a more of an international mindset. So I would say those would be the two, Doc, would be, vision or lack thereof, and then this construct of emotional intelligence and being able to master that.
Nice. I think the emotional intelligence is going to segue into our final question quite well, to be honest with you, because the final question we have is, what do you think is the best way for leaders to improve their leadership skills?
Again, I don't know if there's I don't know if there's a recipe or a perfect kind of way to do that. I think there are some best practices, right? I think obviously educating oneself, like being more knowledgeable, being more competent. And how do you do that? Well, reading, whether they're articles, whether they're books, whether they're videos, whether they're podcasts. Um, but really, I think education. I think knowledge. Learning more about leadership is one, and then the activation part of it is so you can read about leadership. How do you activate it? And I think being engaged and being involved in products and projects, programs, um, conferences, research. But I think the biggest one is I think like, and I gave you the example, the Super Bowls. Like I've done 14 Super Bowls with the National Football League, and it's like, well, what do your students do? Well, I really take each and every one of them and I put them in leadership positions, leadership roles. Like what? Oh, yeah, we have a person is a director of marketing. And so their job is to get our message out there. So they'll work with the Winchester Star, they'll work with the local newspaper, they'll set up our social media. We have an event manager. These are students that's
Right.
responsible for booking the hotels, booking the flights. That's your job, right? And then we've got some folks that are working with mass comm, and the mass comm folks are kind of also working with the marketing folks so that we can maybe create a video or create some type of visuals that we could use when we come back. And so if there's ways that leaders can have other mentors or other folks to put them in positions for them to
Okay.
exercise their leadership capabilities. And the military does a really good job with that. Police, EMT, right? They do really good jobs. You kind of like you lead in stages, right? You take on responsibilities at different levels that'll
Right.
eventually get you to be the chief. That'll get you to the top. So that would be what one of mine would be. And again, mentors, right? Relying on successful leaders, having a circle of successful people in your circle that you can lean on and that you can bounce ideas off, that can give you direction to help you navigate that leadership trail.
Nice. No, I like that quite a bit. I think a couple of things I would probably throw in there, and I would love to get your perspective on it. But one thing about you talk about a leader or somebody that wants to be in a leadership position, improving their leadership skills, I would highly recommend um, a certain level of self awareness. So, for example,
Oh yeah.
go and take several assessment suites, right? You were talking about
Yes,
EQ.
sir.
Well, what is my, what is my level of EQ? That's one thing I can improve. A lot of things don't change. That one you can. So, take a communication behavioral assessment or style assessment, taking something that, hey, what
Absolutely.
drives me and motivates me? What are my soft skill competencies? How do I view the world? How, what is my emotional intelligence quotient? What is my EQ? And get
Yeah.
that level of self-awareness. And I figure that, I mean, you can't fix it if you don't know it's broke. But if you come back and your EQ does score rather low, what can I do to try to improve that? The way I process information, not going to change a tremendous amount. I can adapt, right? Somebody totally introverted and is big into the number stats, the analytics side of it. Can they adapt to get up and speak in front of a crowd? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is that how they're naturally wired? Maybe not. They might not be motivated to, hey man, I can't wait to get out there and shake hands and kiss babies, right? That's my jam. But they might have to do it for their position so they can adapt. But the EQ, I think you can learn enough about to really start to build on that. And that's been shown in research that you can improve your level of emotional intelligence over time. So I think just having that baseline self-awareness is a big one.
Critical.
Second one, maybe going back to influence. So what do you think about, talk a little bit on the self-awareness part with, as far as like assessment suites and knowing that about yourself that you can't see looking in the mirror.
Exactly. I think you hit a bullseye. It's again, leadership is not about you. It's about others. So it's not about, how you view yourself may be different than how others view you.
Very
so
true.
I think that reflection piece is a two-part piece where you have to be self-aware of yourself. What you have to know what your strengths are, but more importantly, your weaknesses as well. So I think, and again, you're a resident expert in that domain with some of the work that you've done in creating those leadership profiles, creating not only individual profiles, but team profiles. Like how does the team interact? And I think, that's critically important. And again, the work that you've done and there's all types of instruments out there. But it's a matter of, are they being utilized? And not only that, how impactful can they be if you take that information, you take that data and actually utilize it within the workplace to try to better not only the culture, because leadership is always tied to culture. Right.
Yes.
So, and so I think you're right, Doc. That's a critical point, is that self-awareness. In other words, getting a better understanding of who you are and how you lead. And it's not about how you lead, but are you leading effectively? That's the key as well.
Correct. And
the
I think
outcomes, are you meeting your mission objectives? Are you meeting your outcomes?
Absolutely. And because I think one of the things I love about some of the assessment suites that I utilize is, it doesn't just say, hey, here's how I process information, right? I'm DISC or whatever some of them just stop at. I love the fact that it'll give you, here's a list of 10 or 12 ways to communicate with Fritz, ways not to communicate with Fritz, right? Okay. Yeah. These are some of the things that kind of trigger me. Well, if I know the things that I like, top three, and pick whatever resonates with me, pick the ones that I really just drives me at the wall, nails down a chalkboard. I can share that with my team, right? I can also look at, there's things that talk about perceptions. Here's how I see myself. Cool. That's not important. Here's how I can come across to others when I'm under a moderate or severe amount of pressure, stress, fatigue, or whatever, and not even realize I'm coming across that way. So if you get that level of self-awareness and ask some of your team members, have I ever come across this way? Oh yeah, and if they're honest, or willing to be honest, or hey, if I'm really stressed about something, reverse engineer it. I don't want to come across like this. I need to be very aware of that so I don't.
Yes, sir.
And then being able to kind of read body language and communication styles and the words people use and realize, hey, if I actually use what I call platinum rule communication, right? Which a lot of people haven't heard of, but the golden rule is great for everything out there except communicating with other people. Because if you say, hey, do unto others as you have done unto you. Well, if you're the 3 bullet point kind of guy, and tell me what you're going to tell me what you told me, and tell me and get out, right? Just boom, 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 3 bullet points out the door. If I go around and I communicate with everybody that exact same way, and I walk around and all I'm doing is just, I walk in, not hi, how you doing, how things going, how's wife and kids, whatever. It's, hey, I need 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and run out the door, and I just vomit 5 bullet points on somebody. That ain't going to go over real well with most of the population that don't think and communicate just like you. But if you could realize platinum rule communication is communicating with others how they would like to be communicated with. So if you can kind of sense that, okay, he's got a little bit more of a softer tone and he takes a little bit to think about stuff before he reacts. So maybe I need to tailor my approach because I actually care about the ones I work with, the ones I live with, the ones I interact with. I actually have a care for them as a human. Maybe I'm willing to learn a little bit and adapt to their communication style so they get the best, and I can be more effective as a leader. I can reach my outcomes much better because stuff isn't miscommunicated. I'm not, rattling feathers because of I said something that was perfectly innocent in my eyes, but you took it the wrong way because of the way I communicated with it. I think that for a team is extraordinary, just at a baseline, is extraordinarily important to increase productivity and efficiency and effectiveness. And honestly, one of the last things I'd probably recommend is we all know the Maxwell quote that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And I look at it as everybody influences somebody. So everybody puts a level of leadership out there, whether it's a single mom with 3 kids to a CEO of a Fortune 50 company, everybody's influencing somebody, right?
Absolutely.
And leading somebody.
Right.
But if you're like, I'm under frontline staff level, or I work for myself, or I'm a solopreneur, or whatever. I don't have, a big staff to lead. Well, you know what? Join a nonprofit board, serve, be a volunteer coordinator with the nonprofit. Like I said, show leadership by being on like I said, 1 or 2 nonprofit boards, serving that way.
Oh yeah.
Doing those things, I think personally, and I'd love to get your thoughts on, that type of, I can go practice my leadership skills, join a Toastmasters club. I improve my communication skills and I get to, learn leadership skills practically. I get to serve on a nonprofit board or let's say go to Rotary and serve on a committee and be in charge of that, something to where you don't have to be in the leadership position to practice those leadership skills. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily have to be in a leadership position to practice those skills, but there are breakouts. There will be opportunities. So, you're on a committee, someone chairs the committee, but then all of a sudden they say, hey, we've got this other little project that we're working on, Dr. Dave, would you like to take the lead on that? So now you've gone from, a committee that has a chair to another program that we're going to be working on. So of course, you strongly encourage, again, when I talked about, how do you practice, or how do you get better as a leader, is by engaging yourself in different experiential opportunities to increase or enhance your leadership capabilities. So, it's almost like, well, how do I get stronger? Well, you work out. Okay. Well, what are some of the specific? What are you trying to work? You're working upper body, or you're working lower body, are you working cardio, or what are you trying to do? And I think again, engaging in particularly around the servant mentor piece, which is really a good one as well. Serving on boards, help, volunteering, helping with nonprofits. Lots of opportunities to enhance. And it also says a lot about you as well, right? You're being socially accountable. You're being socially responsible. It is not about you. True leadership is about helping and supporting others. So by joining and engaging in those other curricular activities, I think also is a great way, to improve your leadership skills as well.
Nice. With that point, I think we will tie a bow on this podcast and wrap it up. I think you summed it up nicely. Leadership is not about you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. You're doing great work, man.
Thank you, sir. Well, the last thing we always ask everybody, it's not one of the 4 questions, but tell our listeners how they can connect with you, your company, your site, you can connect on LinkedIn, whatever. How can they get more Dr. Fritz Polite's goodness?
I'm pretty easy to connect with. I will give you a couple just quick ones. You can reach me. You know, my email account is dr.fritz.polite@gmail.com. You can
Okay.
follow me on Twitter/X at Dr. Polite 33. If you wanted to, you can actually go on the internet. My cell phone number is there. So if you want to,
that's really connecting with you, man.
If you want to dig, if you want to dig in there, you know, somebody ended up putting that out there, so it is out there. But you can reach out to me directly, and then also as well, anybody that's connected with Dr. Dave is connected with me. So if you have any problems or challenges getting a hold of me, I'll let my boss, my right hand man, Dave, Dr. Dave Miles, will hook me up. He'll hook you up.
All right. So I'll tell everybody, go follow Fritz on LinkedIn, follow Fritz on X. And with that, thank you for being here. And we're going to conclude this episode of Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave. We will see you for the next episode. Take care.
Keep up the good work, Doc. You're doing good work, man. Keep it up.